This is not Star Wars, is what Robot Head had to say about the Cassian Andor series. I've responded to a couple of Robot Head's videos in the past because I think he makes a lot of silly points about certain things, and I don't think he is the least toxic Star Wars fan. I don't know if he's toxic. He probably is, but I'm just trying to be nice. So I'm going to respond or react to what he has to say in this video. This is not Star Wars Andor. I'm someone that's actually really enjoyed Andor so far. I know it's not perfect. I'm open to giving it criticism. So let's see if I agree or disagree with what Robot Head said. 3, 2, 1, go.
Andor, the adult version of Star Wars, is here, which means flashbacks, everything moving at a glacial pace. And of course, we have to start in a brothel.
I don't want Garni.
Behave.
I am expecting just like really small details that he's going to pick out and criticize, just like the fact that it starts in a bar. Is that really a problem? Anyway, let's carry on.
This video is brought to you by
I do like his
Squarespace,
intro
the
song,
only one
I have to say
platform
that.
Build your online presence. But before we discuss Hollywood's morals, or lack thereof, let's discuss the entertainment value of Andor. Andor looks 1,000 times better than most of Disney's Star Wars content.
Yeah,
The
I'll
low
give you
point,
that.
Of course, being, sadly, the Kenobi show. Yes, ever since the producers announced they weren't going to use the stagecraft large projection screens that Lucasfilm has been relying on for all of their Disney Plus content, I've been interested to see how this show would look, because those screens in the right hands can look amazing. In the wrong hands, which is most of the time, it makes scenes look oddly framed and forces everything to look highly artificial. But
I agree with some of that. I don't think it's most of the time that they're in the wrong hands, but it can look really, really good at some points. And throughout the Kenobi series, it didn't look as good as it did in The Mandalorian. Fair enough.
a lot of this show looks amazing,
Mhm.
which it should for $15 to $25 million per episode. See, Andor was shot on location in the UK and at the classic Pinewood Studios, which means we also happily get a lot of British accents, which is a nice change and feels like old times.
I'm not even a Native American. No, you're the closest thing we've got, and that's a fact.
Everything looks
Okay.
and feels like it was shot by a professional with actual talent. Nicely framed
I'm
shots,
waiting for the
better
criticism.
lighting,
It's been
interesting
positive
ideas,
so far.
even things we haven't seen before, which is highly unusual for this franchise. We even get a droid with an interesting personality who feels like he's straight out of Silent Running.
Take care of yourself, Dewey. Things just haven't worked out for me.
I haven't seen
It's
whatever
something
this
very
is.
rare in modern Star Wars. A mostly good cast that can project feelings and emotion without screaming.
This is very
and
positive.
It's actually a pleasure to watch. It all feels a bit wrong.
Oh,
And the
right,
feeling
there
of
we
it being
go.
A bit wrong has nothing to do with it being surprisingly well executed. It all feels a bit wrong because it doesn't feel anything like Star Wars, which is a bit of a problem when you're supposedly making Star Wars content. Boy, did I get excited when we didn't start in some town. I mean,
I don't know what you mean by that, though. Yeah, of course, this doesn't feel like other Star Wars projects because this isn't connected to the Force or the Jedi in any possible way. Why is that a problem? Why shouldn't we have that? Like, why limit what this franchise can be? If we get a couple series like the Andor series, then all of a sudden the Andor series feels like Star Wars. Why should we just limit Star Wars to the Jedi and the
looks all
Force?
straight out of other movies, and there's not one original idea, but still, we're in a city and not another horrible, dirty
What do you
little
mean, not
town.
one original
Well,
idea?
That didn't last long. So why doesn't it feel like Star Wars? Star Wars was a classic tale of good and evil, wrapped in a fantasy sci-fi adventure. And fantasy being the important bit, Star Wars is closer in tone to a wizard and dragon adventure than it is to wormholes and scientific problems. Now, I hate to break this to a lot of people, but another thing about the Star Wars universe is that it isn't real. The locations aren't real. The events aren't real. I have to explain this because a lot of people like to say things like, I want to know more about the side characters in Star Wars, or I want more Star Wars without the annoying Jedi and Sith. As if Star Wars is a real place and these other amazing stories are sitting there waiting to be discovered. It's such a bizarre...
Why not, though? Like, yeah, of course it's sci-fi, but why can't we explore some of the more real aspects? Like, at the end of the day, Star Wars was based off real things. It was based off a real war. Just because it's like a sci-fi universe doesn't mean we can't have a show about Boba Fett, a show about Andor. Like, at the end of the day, he's like said himself, like, the show's good. Leave it at that. Like, it's a good show. Why don't we want good shows?
Creativity and how fiction works. The Star Wars side stories these people think would be fascinating just don't exist. What does exist are many loved books that would make for great content.
No, side stories that are fascinating do exist. Just sadly, something like the Book of Boba Fett wasn't that good. But if you're trying to tell me that it can't possibly be interesting, then you are wrong. I would consider Star Wars Rebels a side story. I would consider The Mandalorian a side story. I would consider Jedi Fallen Order a side story. And I think most would consider that they were very good. Simple as that.
Writers that understood the world of Star Wars and weren't trying to fight against it, which is very different to what we're getting today.
It's not fighting against Star Wars, it's just a new side of it.
When we get to camp, we're going to tell them this was my idea and we've been planning it all the while. If you change that in any way, you and I are going to have a big problem.
I'm always perplexed when people say they want Star Wars to move away from the Jedi and the Force, as if Star Wars has more to offer. The Jedi and the Force are the main thing that separates Star Wars from a lot of other mundane sci-fi.
Yes.
It's energy.
But it is still more than that. It always has been.
Luminous beings, Zoe, not this crude matter.
And look what you get when they do remove it completely. And look what you get when you see just a hint of it.
Fair point, but just because when we moved away from it, we got a bad show, doesn't mean that we got a bad show because we moved away from it. If we're being honest, The Book of Boba Fett was just a bad series. Andor is good. Both are away from the Jedi and the Force, and that you can step away from it with it still being good. But to be fair to Robot Head, I also prefer the Jedi and Force related stories. I think they are much more interesting, and I think they are what makes like Star Wars. They are what started off Star Wars. Yes, the universe has more to offer, and I want to see that, but I prefer the Jedi stuff.
Plus, Disney has already spent their whole time racing away from the Jedi and the Sith.
It's time for the Jedi to end.
It's
Rogue
almost
One,
it's almost
no
as if
Jedi.
Luke changed his mind. It's almost as if in that very movie he sacrificed himself to save the Jedi Order. Crazy how that works.
Solo, a Star Wars story, no Jedi. The sequels, fake Jedi. Mandalorian,
Okay.
minimal Jedi. Boba Fett,
I take back what I said about trying to be nice in the intro. He is just straight up a toxic fan.
no Jedi. Obi-Wan, Dollar Store Sith, Andor, no Jedi. And when the Disney...
Kenobi also had Vader and Obi-Wan himself. He's just nitpicking, like I said, just trying to pick out any negative things he can.
shows do attempt anything with the Jedi or Force, people lose their minds with joy, no matter how minimal or token the scene is.
It was good,
It's the
though.
same reaction when we get a hint of the fantasy element. Man, I think Ahsoka and The Mandalorian is the only time they have come close to recapturing the true fantasy feel of Star Wars. But for some reason, modern Lucasfilm are too arrogant or too stupid to understand this. So they keep trying to move away from the things that people love about Star Wars.
So uncivilized.
Yes and no. Like, yeah, the fantasy is what makes Star Wars as good as it is, but I don't think they're dumb and stupid for trying to move away from it. They're just expanding, like, the possibilities with this universe. But like I said, I agree that the fantasy is definitely the best part, but at least trying to see what it looks like outside of that is completely fine. I also don't think that anything other than Andor has moved beyond that so far. Even the Book of Boba Fett had some fantasy, had a rancor, like, come on. But yeah.
I really hope the new Indiana Jones has more school politics and more talking and less adventure. And please, can we move on from all that archaeological crap? Because I'd like to know more about the side characters, like Mutt. Please, Disney, an adult show where Mutt visits every brothel
Can't
in
lie,
Tijuana.
haven't
Why not
watched
Back to the
Indiana
Future, but
Jones.
with less time travel? Maybe
Probably
we could see
can't
how
comment
Marty's
on this
uncle ended up
part.
in jail. Maybe it could be brothel related.
Your Uncle Joey didn't make parole again.
The original Jurassic Park is a classic. Why not a backstory to the guy who died on the toilet? Seeing how he became
Is
a
this meant
lawyer
to be
would very
going this
slow and
fast?
boring. And apparently, that's perfect
Why is he
for grown-up
talking like this?
entertainment. Can we have new Star Trek with all the interesting writing removed and more dumb over-the-top action force tin?
Oh dear, that one's already happened.
Also haven't seen Star Trek.
For a few more minutes. You with me?
In the history of cinema, most, and by a large margin, most films were made for the grown-ups. And up to a couple of years ago, strip joints and brothels were reserved for actual adult content.
Pure Alabama black snake.
Okay.
But Pretty Woman changed all that. All of a sudden, streetwalkers didn't smell like a combination of cheap perfume and sweat, didn't have visible track marks, and oddly, still had all their own teeth. Well, Julia Roberts always looks like she's always got an extra set of teeth shoved in there, so it's hard to tell.
This is a very big tangent from the
Now
Andor
every bloody
series.
show out of America has to visit a strip joint or a brothel. which is fine if the entertainment doesn't fall under a name that has been marketed to kids and families for the past 40 years. What's a brothel? So yes, again, for what keeps coming up when reviewing...
Is it seriously the brothel that's causing this much of a problem for him? There's one scene. It was one scene.
Disney content, we see the concerning mentality of
Right.
modern Hollywood. We have adult themes forced into a show that is purely made to attract kids and families to the Disney streaming service.
We do have a
No,
lovely
I don't think
internet to hear
Andor
us
has
with this
promised to
program.
be like for the kids or anything. If anything, it's promised to be the opposite. It's promised to be like showing the mature side of Star Wars. What?
Eyes you're looking for?
I don't want Garni.
Behave.
And the brothel scene added absolutely nothing to the story.
Move on from the brothel scene.
A story we're going to forget about in 5 minutes. Literally.
It just introduced us to the start like of the show. It just started off the show. It told us a little bit. Like Andor mentioned his sister, which we later seen in the flashbacks him like separate from. Is it really that much of a problem? The fact that it started in a bar? Come on.
4 episodes in and he hasn't mentioned his sister again.
Are you in all the way?
Let's get to it.
It's not
Now, a little
like an
break to
8
talk about-
episode series though, so that's fine. Like,
Our favourite sponsor.
we'll skip the
Smarties,
ad.
thanks to Squarespace,
We'll skip the
our
ad.
photographer,
We'll
filmmaker,
skip the ad.
will help you
Squarespace, if you want to
with the new
sponsor
members
me,
area,
I
which
won't
is a
skip the
game
ad,
changer.
but you
Percent off your
don't,
first purchase
so I'm
for a
skipping the ad.
cleaner or a bar dreams. Go to Squarespace today.
There we go.
Andor's sister, who he's trying to find, could have been working as a dish hand or a cleaner or a bartender or 1,000 other jobs and would have made zero difference to the story. But no, our new Star Wars family entertainment starts with Andor discussing how his sister took money for shoving bits of other people, and I'm guessing aliens, into her regions. And like I said in the last video, I'm Australian. It's
Did I
virtually
miss this?
impossible to offend me.
I don't. Did I miss like a huge detail? Because I don't remember it mentioning that.
But I, like most normal people, know the difference between entertainment for all ages and entertainment aimed at a so-called adult audience. What is going on at Disney and why do they care so little?
I think that this
Well, the
is
people that
still
made them the
able
company
to be
they are.
enjoyed by
Walt
like a
Buffy's
somewhat
spinning
younger
in his
audience. It still has
cryo chamber at
great
the depth
action
of
and stuff like
creativity and
that.
family entertainment. Anyway, we're not here to dissect Hollywood and its
It's not exactly full of politics or anything like that either. I think Andor is just less fantasy than any other Star Wars show. I don't think it's necessarily unenjoyable for any kids or anything. I don't think that's the case at all. I think I would have enjoyed this show still 5 years ago or whatever. For reference, I'm 18, so that would make me one of the younger audiences that, if anything, Star Wars focuses on more so. Around 13 is probably the target age, right?
view of women because I just did that video. But Disney
It was probably another toxic video because it was a
should be placed under the Star
She-Hulk
Wars
series
banner is not only
video.
ridiculous, it's also lazy. They may as well make a hard adult version of The Wizard of Oz. People who say they want a more adult version of Star Wars or a more serious version are really saying, I just want more shows that feature my toys, regardless of quality or tone.
But the quality's good. It's a good
It's a
show.
marketing team's wet dream. Grab any script, have a TIE fighter fly past, and we're all good to go.
Apparently he doesn't like Andor then. He just thinks it looks good and that's about it. But Andor, like we said, it was going to be slow. We said it was going to be like a batch of like 3 episode arcs, and it has more episodes than your average live action Star Wars show, so it can be a slower plot. And I think it's been good so far. Like,
growing up, we'd watch the Star Wars movies. Then we'd switch over to Battlestar Galactica. Doctor Who might be on, or Arc 2. Maybe even reruns of Logan's Run, or Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Could have been Star Trek that was going to fill up your night. We watched them all, because they all had a different look, flavour and feel.
Let's go getting down.
The language was different, the stories were different, the villains were different. It wasn't always the bloody Empire.
Fine, important.
Taking something of real value from the Empire.
Each offered something original. Star Trek didn't look like Doctor Who. Star Wars didn't look like Blade Runner. Well, now it does. Now it looks exactly like Blade Runner and 2001 and about 20 other movies it's ripping off.
not a droid rolling through a scrapyard. Start the court case. Really? Like, all right, yeah, maybe it
Hard to
did
believe
copy
Star Wars
Wall-E
changed
for a
the
little
cinema.
bit. And what? Like, it's not like it copied the plot of Wall-E or something. Like, it one shot or one little sequence is the same. If anything, it's cool that they're doing stuff like that.
And now all they do is copy other cinema. If Disney had the same control and attitude over the movie industry in the 80s as they do now, we would have never seen films like RoboCop, Blade Runner, Terminator, The Running Man, Escape from New York, They Live, The Fly, Repo Man, Tron, even E.T. Well, we might have got those films, but they would have been watered down, stretched out, and completely boring. But the modern Disney consumer would be happy because it would have Star Wars in the title, and they would get to see things they recognise to keep them in their safe place. Because how many people do you think would be applauding Andor if it was a new franchise and not under the Star Wars banner? At the pace it's going and the choice of lead character, I'd say not many.
Yes and no. I think no, because it is actually a good show, but I think yes, because it doesn't necessarily have much like intrigue for it, if that makes any sense. And that is why Andor's underperforming, because it's like not that interesting of a concept, even despite it being Star Wars. But that doesn't change the fact that it's like still good. It just doesn't have like a interesting pitch, like, oh, here's what this cool new series is about. How would you describe Andor and pitch it in the best way possible? In fairness, we haven't seen all of it yet, but I don't think it necessarily would perform that well, because it's not like, I don't know, Stranger Things. Oh, here's I haven't seen Stranger Things, so I'm going to do my best here. Here's this weird town where stuff happens. There's this bold girl with superpowers. Oh, there's this ugly villain that also has powers, and the kids have to defeat all the bad guys. Like, that's a bit more interesting of a pitch than here's a criminal that gets hired by a rich guy that's starting a rebellion against an empire, and he joins a team to do so, and they steal stuff from this empire, but the episodes are still enjoyable. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do like how the terms mature and grown up are used by journalists to feign intelligence when discussing a show that's unbearably slow and boring. The films I mentioned.
I don't think it is. Like, it's okay to just have a bit of build up to an episode. If you want everything to just be like really snappy, then do you not care about like character development or anything like that? That's the whole reason why moments like what happened in the build up of like the 2 episodes that we're just building towards that action episode, the character development is what made that work, because we cared about the characters that then died in that episode, if that makes sense. Like, we need moments to be slower. Like, the pacing, I think, of the show is fine. I don't know if that's just me, and it's allowing for us to learn about the characters. Just me.
RoboCop, Blade Runner, Terminator, The Running Man, Escape from New York,
This
They Live, The
video
Fly,
is just
Repo
making me
Man,
realise I
were
haven't
all
watched
made
enough films,
and
to be
rated
honest.
for adults, and they're all a blast to watch.
Yeah, what's the difference? Is it just
Game of Thrones
like
is not made for the
blood? Because difference between Andor being classed as mature and adult and these shows so far from the clips he's shown is just blood. Like I said, I haven't seen those movies. Please don't hate me. But
kids.
is it just bad that Andor doesn't have blood? I thought you wanted it to be available for the target audience for Star Wars being younger kids as well. Why can't it be like a more mature show just without the gory side?
So that politics, battles, murder, sex, dragons, heads exploding, you know, actual fun things to watch. And you could just remove the sex and heads exploding and replace the swords with lightsabers, and it wouldn't be just for the adults. Everyone could have fun watching it. No, grown-up Star Wars has to put the most boring and forgettable character into a boring and slow show where very little happens.
We're robbing the armory at the Aldani garrison.
A high story. How many times are we going to repeat
It's
the
not
same
a heist
idea?
story, it's a
always getting in
heist
and out
arc
some
of a
base or
series.
ship.
That's why they only keep a 40-man regiment in the garrison.
Because they know no one's stupid enough to try it.
I don't see any shields.
That's because no one will be stupid enough to.
Again,
The dumbass Disney
one
writers
episode.
have 2, maybe 3 ideas they keep rotating. Force Awakens, enter Star Killer Base undetected to turn something off. Everything goes wrong. Rogue One, go undercover to enter Scarif Base undetected to steal plans. Everything goes wrong. Last Jedi, go undercover to enter Snoke's ship to turn something off. Everything goes wrong. Solo a Star Wars story. Go undercover to steal an Empire ship, and then go undercover to steal coaxium. Everything goes wrong. The Mandalorian. Go undercover to enter an Imperial base and steal information. Everything goes wrong. Rise of Skywalker. Enter Kylo's ship undetected to steal Chewie. Everything goes wrong. The Book of Boba Fett. Enter Jabba's palace undetected to steal Slave One. Everything goes wrong. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Go undercover to enter Fortress Inquisitorius to steal Leia. Everything goes wrong. Andor. Go undercover to an Imperial base to steal money. Could it be possible that everything will go wrong?
Not prepped for this.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I rate that. That was quite funny. Yeah, I mean, Star Wars uses like the infiltrating places quite often, but it works quite a lot of the time. And in a lot of the stuff that you mentioned, say like The Mandalorian, it uses different concepts for pretty much every episode. Of course, they were going to have like some kind of heist story. That was pretty funny. I can't lie. Fair enough. You didn't hear that voice break. You didn't hear it. My lightsabers died. Great.
9 for 9. I'm glad we're finally getting something new in Star Wars.
It's a suicide run.
Exactly.
Goats with 4 horns, AK-47s, they've let their imaginations go wild with this one. Andor early reactions call it complex, mature, and the best Star Wars spin-off series so far. Grown-up noir thriller makes for the best Star Wars show yet, 5 stars. NME should look up the meanings to grown-up, noir, and thriller, because they don't mean what you think they do. Differs from every Star Wars series before it, in the best ways. Yes, removing any sense of fantasy, excitement, or fun does make this show differ from the other Star Wars content. Shell's got a shell. Ah, well, who knows? This heist storyline could be the greatest Star Wars idea ever, and I might even see something I recognise. Come on, Andor. You can't just look good. You've got to actually do something.
Because they know no one's stupid enough to try it.
No one but us.
I mean, yeah, some valid criticism in there, but overall just kind of nitpicky, kind of like went back on his own points at times. I think the Andor show is good. I think it's different. I don't necessarily think it's like super mature and adult like it was marketed to be, but I think it is a good show. I am very okay with it being a bit slow. Yeah, makes a good point with Disney recycling like some ideas, and the Kenobi series visuals not being the best at times. But other than that, pretty much disagree with most of it, and I think most of you would as well. Let me know what you thought about Andor. Let me know if you agreed with most of what Robothead said in that video. In fairness to him, that was less toxic than the other videos that I watched, but definitely still toxic. Like, the term shill is just being used to describe anyone who enjoys content that the person that uses the word shill doesn't enjoy. Oh, I must be such a huge Disney shill to like the Andor series. I've just before this filmed a video on why I don't like the She-Hulk series. I've said many times that I wasn't a fan of Visions, The Bad Batch, The Book of Boba Fett. I said the Kenobi series was a little disappointing, etc, etc. But no, I'm obviously a shill because I like Andor. But yeah, let me know what you think. Like, subscribe for more. If you want me to do more like responding to people's videos, I'd definitely be down to do that. Maybe like some more like higher edited ones than just like literally a reaction video, because then I can actually think about my points. That would maybe be cool. Recommend any of those videos. I'm sure Robothead's got a catalog for me to go through. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Also, this is the video YouTube thinks you'd like to watch most next, so consider checking it out. I can't speak properly. Now you know why I edit my videos so much, because I stutter all the time. Goodbye.